What's going on, gang? It's your boy Terry L, Boxstar Forum. I'm here at the Next Phase Studios doing my thing here in Northwest London. We're trying something new today. As you know, sometime from time to time, we do the podcast here at the Next Phase headquarters. But we're going to talk about boxing nonetheless. And we got a very interesting topic to talk about today. We're talking about none other than Anthony Joshua's search for a new trainer or new coach. Now, I'll go through the four choices that he apparently visited in the United States or the US-based head coaches or head trainers and see what you think of that. And I'll give you my take. As we all know, it's old news now. Anthony Joshua lost his unified titles to Alexander Usyk of Ukraine. So he's lost his WBA, IBF, and WBO strap. However, because he was so heavily outmatched in that fight in terms of his tactics and what he supposedly got wrong, he's now looking to mend that by looking for a new coach. Now, having said that, let's talk about the coaches he's been visiting and see what you think of the four coaches. So now I'm going to be looking to my right over here at the screen. As reported by Sky Sports News, Anthony Joshua has visited U.S. trainers and the former trainer of Mike Tyson. We'll get into that in a minute. Saul Canelo Alvarez, trainer, plus Amir Khan's ex-coach, were visited by Anthony Joshua in the USA as he considers changes to his training setup, although Rob McCracken is set to remain, probably as head trainer. This is reported by Sky Sports News. Now, the four coaches are Virgil Hunter, Ronnie Shields. So Virgil Hunter being the new coach now of Joshua Buatsi. Ronnie Shields, who used to coach Mike Tyson, albeit only for one fight, towards the end of Mike Tyson's career. And a slew of other fighters. Ronnie Shields has a rich history of fighters that he's had under his tutelage. Eddie Reynoso, obviously Saul Canelo Alvarez, head trainer. And Robert Garcia, the head trainer for Mikey Garcia being Robert Garcia's brother. And all four coaches are based in, funny enough, bar Ronnie Shields, who's based in Texas. The other three coaches, Virgil Hunter is in the Bay Area of California. Oxnard, California is where Robert Garcia is based. And I believe Eddie Reynoso is also based in California, in San Diego. So let's talk about all these coaches. I'm actually going to go with the least likely of coaches I think Anthony Joshua will go with. Okay, so as we know, the four coaches are Virgil Hunter, Ronnie Shields, Eddie Reynoso, and Robert Garcia. For me, Robert Garcia is probably the least likely to work with Anthony Joshua. I would be very surprised if he chooses Robert Garcia. Now, Robert Garcia, as you know, he's worked with a number of fighters. Let's just go over a few of the fighters that Robert Garcia's worked with. I mean, obviously, the one we know of is Mikey Garcia, Nunito Donaire, he's also worked with. And so his pedigree of fighters he's worked with over the years has been quite rich. And he's had some great success, obviously, with Mikey Garcia's brother, and Nunito Donaire he's had great success with. I just don't see that setup working because I just feel that Joshua's style of boxing can't be complemented by a person of Robert Garcia's caliber, because Robert Garcia, being a very technical coach himself, I've never seen or even heard of Robert Garcia work with a heavyweight. Not that he can't, and not that he can't work, and he probably has worked with heavyweights in the past, and we just haven't heard of them, or they haven't made a big name for themselves. But I'm just looking at the styles, and styles make fights, as they say in boxing. But I also believe that the styles of trainers also make a great complement of fighters. And certain fighters are better with certain trainers. And hey, how you doing, baby? Like I said, we're here at the Next Phase Studio, so we're trying some new people coming through, checking in. You know what I mean? We're keeping the vibe going, and that's all I wanted to let you guys know. We're keeping it live and interactive. No faking up in here. So I just don't see Robert Garcia really working out well with Anthony Joshua, but that's my take. The second least likely, I think, to work with Anthony Joshua is Ronnie Shields. And the reason why I say that is it was a toss up between Ronnie Shields and Eddie Reynoso. And I'm only going to go with Ronnie Shields simply because although Ronnie Shields has worked with Mike Tyson, it was only for one fight. And Ronnie Shields has worked with a lot of big names. In fact, Jamal Charlo, one of the Charlo brothers, is now working with Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields goes back like 25 years. So in terms of who he's worked with, I mean, let's just look at who he's worked with. He's worked with Evander Holyfield, heavyweight. David Tua, heavyweight. Pernell Whitaker, Arturo Gatti, although they're lightweight, welterweight fighters, they were great, very skillful fighters. Now, besides Mike Tyson, who at the end of his career, he had David Tua when David Tua was at the pinnacle of his career. And David Tua had that big loss to, who did he lose to as when he lost his undefeated record? Was it Ika Boucher? It wasn't Ika Boucher. David Tua, he got knocked out by, it wasn't Ray Mercer. It wasn't Tony Tucker. It'll come to me. I can't remember who David Tua lost to when he got knocked. No, he didn't actually get knocked out. In fact, he lost a unanimous decision, but it was an absolute a terror. It was a war. And I believe at that time when he lost his first professional fight, he had Ronnie Shields in his corner. So Ronnie Shields with David Tua for a hot minute. And of course, he had Evander Holyfield. And Evander Holyfield was an absolute warrior anytime in his career. Towards the end, obviously, he got too old. But, and obviously, Pernell Whitaker speaks for himself, one of the most skillful fighters I've ever seen in my lifetime. And Arturo Gatti, an absolute warrior. And at the moment, he's working with Joshua Ajagoba, which is Ajagoa, I believe. Oh, no, Ajaba, I believe. I'm sorry, I pronounced the brother's name wrong. But you know what I'm talking about. The tall, slim Nigerian heavyweight who just came up a loss recently. And he's also working with Ronnie Shields. So Ronnie Shields, and of course, like I said, he worked with Jamal Charlo right now. Ronnie Shields has a pedigree of working with heavyweight fighters. It would be a smart choice to go with Ronnie Shields because Ronnie Shields has history of working heavyweights. The reason why I don't know if he'll go with Ronnie Shields is simply because Ronnie Shields probably just has a lot on his plate. And it's how these trainers can prioritize what they have and whether or not they can work with Joshua for the next fight that he has in about 5 or 6 months' time against Alexander Usyk. It would make sense to go with Ronnie Shields, but I'm not sure if he will. But I'll get to that in a minute. Then the next least likeliest he will probably go with is Eddie Reynoso. Eddie Reynoso is, in my opinion, probably one of the best trainers out there in the sense that what Eddie says, Eddie does. Eddie, you do what Eddie says and what Eddie does. If you don't do what Eddie does, then you got issues. And just look at the fighters he's turned around in the time he's been with them. No matter how long he's been with us, it's been a long time or a little bit of time. He has turned Andrew Wiz Jr. around because he went from being the Snickers the Snickers poster child to now he's looking like a proper heavyweight fighter now in terms of he's getting himself in shape. He's doing some good things with obviously Canelo Alvarez. He's doing some good things with Ryan Garcia, as you know, is one of the biggest stars in boxing right now in the U.S. And the thing I like about Eddie Reynoso is like myself being a fitness trainer, I had this methodical way of doing things where you fall in line and you do what I've actually do because I know what I'm doing. And if you do what I ask you to do, then you get results. And Eddie Reynoso is that type of trainer. He's the kind of trainer where he's so confident in what he's doing that if you toe the line and do what he says do, there is no compromise. The evidence speaks for itself. And all you have to do is look at Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, he's turned him into a mega star. And that is quite impressive, hailing from Mexico. But he's based in San Diego, California. His gym is based in San Diego, California. And, you know, if you look at the people that Reynoso's working with and still working with, he's even got the Cuban fighter the Cuban heavyweight Frank. He's worked with Frank. He's worked with Frank Sanchez, the Cuban. He's also worked with Oscar Valdez, WBC super featherweight champion. So that would be a smart choice because he's working with Frank Sanchez, and Frank Sanchez is skillful. And Frank Sanchez beat Ronnie Shields heavyweight Ajoba. So he beat him in a very, very good fight. And he actually outboxed him. He actually dropped him a couple of times, I believe. I was watching that fight. That was on the undercard fight. That was the undercard fight to the Wilder Fury trilogy fight, the third fight. So, he's a really good fighter. I like Frank Sanchez, really, really good fighter. Southpaw, very awkward fighter, fast hands, and good feet. So, so you could see the caliber kind of fighters that's in the Reynoso camp. And it's no joke. I mean, even the fitness regime, these guys come in shape. No one comes into a fight looking like they came out of a Snickers commercial. So if you look at Andy Ruiz Jr. now compared to when he was before he got with Eddie Reynoso, it's like two different individuals. So that would be a smart move, but I'm not sure if that would work because Andy Ruiz Jr. is in that camp. I'm not sure if that blend works. It's a big commitment. It's a very awkward situation. Not that it can't work, but then you got the guy that whooped your ass previously, although Joshua did win the rematch against Andy Ruiz Jr. And it would probably be a smart move to go in that camp because we have Frank Sanchez he could spar with, and Ruiz Jr. he could spar with, and he can start sparring with guys who have really fast hands like Alexander Usyk. So that would probably be his smartest move. But I'm not sure if he'll do that. The fight the trainer I think he will go with is Virgil Hunter up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Sorry, Oakland, California. And the reason why I think he'll go with Virgil Hunter is because Virgil Hunter obviously has done great things with Andre Ward, who everyone admires, but he's doing some great things with Anthony Joshua's close friend, light heavyweight prospect, Joshua Buatsi. And Buatsi, to me, is like a baby Holyfield. And I've said that about Buatsi in previous podcasts. And there's a familiarity with, Joshua's the kind of guy, he likes familiarity, like most fighters, I guess. But Joshua likes familiarity. That's why he won't leave Rob McCracken. And if his close friend is working with someone like Virgil Hunter, one of the things Buatsi is quoted to have said about Virgil Hunter is Virgil Hunter is a very calm influence, and he doesn't say a lot. He's very strategic, and he says just enough for you to get it. And that reminds me when I worked with a guy named David Felgate, a tennis coach, when I was a fitness coach, working with some of the tennis players. And David Felgate being a tennis coach who was responsible for Donna Vidic's rise, Mercurial rise to top 100, and Tim Henman's head coach when Tim Henman was number 4 in the world. And I remember working with David Felgate, and David Felgate was basically saying just enough to the players. He didn't say a whole lot, but when he said something, it was meaningful and you got it. And I learned a lot being around guys like him. You don't have to say a lot. And sometimes, that's why I said earlier, some coaches aren't the right fit for some fighters because maybe they're too talkative, maybe they're too analytical, They go in too much. They confuse the fighters sometimes. They give them too much in the corners. And, you know, trainers like Virgil Hunter, who's been around for years and has had huge success for years, that might be the kind of person that Anthony Joshua needs. But remember, Rob McCracken is the head coach. Now, how any of these guys work with reporting to Rob McCracken, I don't know. As anyone's guess. I'm not saying it can't happen, and it probably can happen, because there could be a level of mutual respect between Rob McCracken and any of the aforementioned that I've just stated. That it could be more of a mutual respect thing where they know Rob McCracken might be the head coach, but they're both sharing knowledge, so to speak. So that's my take on those 4 coaches who may work with Anthony Joshua, if he works with any of them at all. So you tell me what you think with that. I think it's a toss-up between Virgil Hunter. In my mind, I think it's either going to be Virgil Hunter or Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields is based in Texas. All the rest of these guys I mentioned, Virgil Hunter, Robert Garcia, and Eddie Reynoso, are all based in California. So that might suit Joshua because the weather is good in California as opposed to Texas, depending on when you go to Texas. California is blessed with hills and mountains, so he can get some altitude training and maybe improve his fitness. He's tucked away from everything and everyone, and he won't have the distractions as he would have, or as he does have here in London. Sometimes when you train in your own backyard, it can be a bit of a distraction. And maybe working with someone completely new outside the box can help you. Maybe it can. I mean, I'm not so sure that if you take a new trainer, in arguably one of the biggest fights of your life, that it makes sense to go right in with a rematch, as opposed to maybe taking a tune-up fight and then go back in, because then you can look at, you know, what you may have done wrong in a tune-up fight, what have you, and then try something new with arguably the biggest fight of your life when he fights the rematch with Alexander Usyk. He won't take a tune-up fight because he's already activated the rematch clause, Anthony Joshua has. And where does he go from here if he loses the fight? Well, he's still young, so he's not like his career is going to be over. There's still big fights for Anthony Joshua to be made. But it's whether or not Anthony Joshua will want to exercise tampering with the training camp and the coaching staff if he loses, depending on how he loses, which is the big thing. It's not just if he loses, it's how he loses. And I think he's banking on everything of getting these titles back because he wants a big fight with Tyson Fury, who, by the way, is his fate is about to be decided by WBC board, whether or not he fights Dillian White. So that's also in the making. We'll talk about that in a future podcast. So anyway, you come back to me, let me know what you think. That's my thoughts. That's all I got for y'all right now. Hot off the press, Anthony Joshua was looking for a new trainer in the U.S. I'm not so sure he goes with either of those guys I've just mentioned. I really can't see Eddie Reynoso. But you tell me if you know so. Robert Garcia, I don't see that happening. And I don't see the only two that they may see that will probably happen is maybe Ronnie Shields, which makes a lot of sense because Ronnie Shields has history of working with a lot of heavyweights, and Virgil Hunter, who is just, you know, the head honcho right now. In my opinion, is the best coach in the world right now, Virgil Hunter. That's all I got for y'all right now. Holler back at me, let me know what you think. Leave a comment and like and subscribe to the channel. Continue to follow us, like and leave your comments, and we'll come back at you with the next podcast in the next couple of days when we talk about the future fight between Yarde and Lyndon Arthur that's coming up. And of course, the fight coming up next month between Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. That's around the corner. Holler back. Let me know what you think. Stay tuned. Stay safe. Peace out.